Across the college football landscape yesterday, you saw a lot of social media accounts saying darts only this, darts only that, and just for the sheer fact of the matter that we're all wheeling and dealing our way into the college football season that is right on our doorstep. I told y'all during yesterday's show, man, we did the math, we crunched the numbers, and we are less than 500 hours away from college football being played. Florida State and Georgia Tech, not Navy, Florida State and Georgia Tech, about to get it on and popping in Dublin, Ireland. Welcome into the hard count, baby. It is Thursday, August 8th, 2024, the last one on the face of the planet. Gonna make it a great one. We got fall camp intel galore for you, man. We got intel in Coral Gables. Great article, by the way, on on3.com from our very own Pete Nakos. Check that out. We're going to divulge some intel, but there's more notes over in Pete's article. Oklahoma. Injury bug bit them a little bit yesterday, but nonetheless going to unpack the latest from Norman. Speaking of the injury bug, what's next for Texas now with CJ Baxter being done for the year? We're going to talk about that. Also talk about the latest from fall camp in Austin. Also, I asked y'all on my Twitter page, I said, hey, what's the craziest thing that you think is going to happen during the first month of the college football season? So we'll kind of give you a Baker's first month. We'll add in that week 0 to the first month, even though I know that's like the end of August, but to the end of September. Got a lot of really good responses from y'all. We asked y'all for the craziest takes. Some of y'all absolutely came through with that. We also have a couple of other more measured takes we're going to unpack, but we got takes on Texas and Michigan. We got takes on Auburn and Georgia. We got takes on Florida and how they might fare in the first month of the season. So a lot to unpack there. We'll do so together. Record prediction season. Bring your hard hat and a lunch pail. We got two heavy hitters for you. Michigan, they've been in the news. Jim Harbaugh got a show clause. I don't care for even an iota of a second. We'll talk about that like all of about 15 seconds before we do his record prediction, or their record prediction rather. And then Georgia, what are they going to go in 2024? I've told y'all already what I think they're going to accomplish in the postseason. If you've been keeping up with this show, called our shot a week ago today. Even so, what's going to be their final record when it goes to the regular season total for them? So if you're trying to bet the over-under on both of those win totals, we'll give you our 2 cents as it pertains to what they're going to end up at. It's a great day to be alive, man. It's a great day to be alive. And if you are tuned in right now, or you're just a consistent watcher of the show, we do our very best to involve y'all as much as possible. So follow me on the socials at JD Piquel, Instagram and Twitter. We're going to keep ramping up the content for you over there. I told y'all on Tuesday, bad news, no more gambling content on there. I'm sorry, just no more. Good news, only locks. Okay, so no more bets, just locks being given out over at JD Piquel. And let me know, too, on those platforms when your birthday is, because we want to celebrate y'all together. We had a listener of the show reach out to us the other day, or someone who I guess is a friend of that listener, and let us know when their birthday was. And so it was fun to kind of shout them out. And if you want to be wished a happy birthday on this show, let us know, and we'll wish you a happy birthday. All right, let's get right to it, man. We got a lot to unpack when it comes to the fall camp intel. Let's start in Coral Gables. So to be dialed into the nth degree when it comes to what's going on out there at Miami, Kane Sport is our Miami on 3 site. Lock in with them over there. Pete Nakos also has a great article out right now on on3.com giving you a little bit more intel that we're going to unpack right now. But here's a couple of tidbits from Pete's story. Cam Ward is drawing rave reviews. I mean, he is tearing it up. And it's one thing to get a high-profile quarterback through the portal and for them to go through spring practice, but like we all understand this now. When you transfer as a quarterback, there's a lot to acclimate to. Doesn't matter if it's spring practice or fall camp. You'd hope it's spring practice. But even so, man, like it takes some time to figure out, one, just the school part of where you're at. I mean, in many instances, you're changing your location in the United States. You're changing your teammates. You're changing your class schedule. And then on top of that, hey, here's a new playbook. Hey, get up to speed with your new wide receivers, your offensive line, your offensive coordinator, Cam Ward. Every single thing I have heard about him, both internally and externally, around Miami has been positive. And when I say internally and externally, I mean people that are within that building and people that have no stake in the game whatsoever but are just privy to what's going on there. So Cam Ward, if you're a Miami Hurricane fan, buckle up. It's going to be a fun year. You have an alpha at quarterback. That's a word that they keep on using with him. Hey, he's an alpha. Hey, he sets the temperature. Hey, he's a leader. Guys follow him. It sounds very like, entry level, very simplistic, very like, oh, that's nice, your quarterback's a leader. No. That's how you compete at the highest level, is when your quarterback is not just the quarterback, but the guy. We talked about that with Nebraska. with Dylan Raiola and him making that effort, it sounds like Cam Ward is doing that in a big-time fashion right now at Miami. Y'all, they love their running back room. Not just who they have as the starter, which is another transfer. Damian Martinez from Oregon State, 2,000-yard back out there in Corvallis, making his way out to a little bit warmer weather, now being with the Hurricanes. I love the way he runs behind his pads. You've heard me talk about him a lot on this show. I think he fits perfectly with what Shannon Dawson wants to do offensively because they want to push the ball deep. They want to spray the ball around the yard. That's why you got Cam Ward. No way around it. But I would also add on to that, they want to hit you in the mouth. Both Shannon Dawson and Mario Cristobal, I have to believe, share that sentiment. Last year, they averaged 5 yards a carry on the ground, and that was before they added Damian Martinez. Expect that number to be somewhere in that 5 yards a carry plus range, and it's not just Damian Martinez they're excited about. Also, true freshman Jordan Lyle, standing out during fall camp. And this is kind of the fun part of the fall camp intel is you know a lot of these names I'm mentioning, like you know who Cam Ward is. You've obviously been on red alert, high alert for who Damian Martinez is since he transferred from Oregon State to Miami. But, like, hearing about these young bucks that are making some noise, Jordan Lyle being one of those guys, that's good news. Having real depth in the running back room is important for a number of reasons. One, it allows you to be versatile. Okay, so being able to have somebody you can hand the ball off to for one drive, the next series, swap them out, you don't lose too much from back to back. So they feel great about Jordan Lyle right now with the early returns from him in fall camp. And then Mark Fletcher is a guy that you know from last season, got a little bit dinged up, coming back from the Liz Frank injury, easing his way back in, but they expect to be pretty deep in that running back room and be pretty multiple offensively. Now on the defensive side of the ball, man, you know those high-profile portal guys. Tyler Barron, who was at Tennessee last year, Simeon Barrow, who was at Michigan State last year, both proven commodities in their own right, but Justin Scott is a guy who they expect to play early this year. He is a true freshman, former five-star that they flipped from Ohio State. He is all of 6'4", 300 pounds. All right, so he physically right now, from what I can tell, has the body to help you right away. And the fact that they're already telling us or making it a point to say, hey, this guy's going to play. We expect this guy to play. Future is very bright for the folks out there in Miami on the defensive side of the football. It's important to note here, the way that we talk about Miami right now going into year 3, notice the things that I'm saying about them. Hey, they want to be tough running the football. Hey, they like the defensive line. Hey, we know what they are on the offensive line with Francis Mawanoa and company being a lot more improved from what they were since Mario Cristobal got there. The physical edge Miami has is going to, I think, make the difference for them in 2024. Now, Cam Ward is obviously kind of the end-all, be-all in a lot of ways for how high they end up flying, but the physical edge at Miami is something Mario Cristobal and this staff have worked to install since they got there. I think in year 3, that's when you see the real return on investment if you're a Hurricane fan. So I think they're a college football playoff team. It's fall camp, so we're grabbing all the intel we can. Pete Nakos and his story now. Go check that out at on3.com. A lot more intel for you there in regards to the Canes. And as always, make sure you're dialed in to Cane Sport to get all the intel for Miami year-round. So I want to talk about Oklahoma here in just a second. Before we do, though, want to make sure we add this. If you are a college football sicko and you're saying, JD, I'm tuned in year-round. I'm tuned into the YouTube channel. I watch the Inside Scoop on the On3 Recruits channel. I watch the Wilt Fong Whip Around, the 5-Star Flex. That's all phenomenal. All of this is free. All of this doesn't cost you a dime. But if you want to kick it up a notch, Emerald style, if you use code JD1 at on3.com, get yourself a subscription for $1 for the first month. And that'll get you access to all the boards, to read all the content over there for 1 month for $1. Like, that is theft. I mean, that is Christmas in August, especially right now with all this fall camp intel that we're trying to get out there for y'all. There's only so much that we can fit into an hour-long show. So bottom line here, I'm trying to tell you, JD1 is the code. Gets you a subscription to on3.com, $1 for the first month. I promise you it is the best $1 you will spend, all right? So that dollar would also get you access to Sooner Scoop for a month. And there is a lot going on out there in Norman, Oklahoma. Jackson Arnold obviously is going to be the guy for them this coming season. First year as starting quarterback. If you remember the bowl game, we came in here the day after that game and said, hey, I understand there was a lot of turnovers in that game. At the exact same time, I wouldn't be overly concerned about that because that was one of his first times being a starting quarterback at the collegiate level. Not his very first time, but still one of his first times. This team is Jackson Arnold's team. The team that he took over in the bowl game was Dylan Gabriel's team. And so when we talk about his progress over spring ball and fall camp, like he's actually getting reps now with his team, being the guy. And again, that sounds sort of simplistic, and in a way it is, but there's no magic formula to account for reps, to account for doing it. And Jackson Arnold said as much. He's like, you can watch all the film you want, but like until you actually go out there and do it, like that's when it really starts to make sense for you. That's when it really starts to have the light bulb moment and have it all click for you. I'm paraphrasing, but that was sort of what he got at. We're going to let it bake with him. We're going to let him sort of take his lumps, make his mistakes, and how much of those happen during the season versus fall camp, we'll see. I would just say be patient with him. Be patient with him because I think his talent at some point in time is going to flash, and you're going to see that actually be the difference for you at Oklahoma. Is that this year? Is this next year? Remains to be seen. But what I want to make sure we say about Jackson Arnold is let's be patient and understanding with this is a process for him. This is a new play caller. Offensively, speaking of that play caller, Seth Luttrell, the vibe around Norman right now is that the offense will be very similar to what Jeff Lebby ran. A lot of air raid concepts. They're still going to want to push the ball downfield. Still going to be that, spread offense that you've been accustomed to seeing out there in Norman. There's also a vibe, though. They want to freaking run the football, man. Like George Stoya and Eddie Radosevich do a phenomenal job over at Soonerscoop.com. They also do a phenomenal job at the Sooner Scoop YouTube channel. They'll give you full half-hour practice reports, so go check those out. But one thing that George Stoya mentioned multiple times was how much they want to lean on the outside zone run game. Maybe lean's the wrong word. How much they want to incorporate the outside zone run game, rather. Keep an eye on that because they got a good backfield. Javonte Barnes, I think, is going to bounce back from a unideal sophomore campaign for him. There's still a physical edge to this Oklahoma offense. How it differs from Jeff Lebby, some of that's kind of wait and see, right? Because Jeff Lebby called the offense with his own personality, his own style. And just because the scheme is similar, it can be very different with how you call the offense, right? Like how you press the buttons of the same machine could differ a little bit, especially with different personnel. Now, speaking of personnel, that tight end room, they believe is a little bit more athletic than they had last year. And the reason why that's worth noting here, when you have athletic and versatile tight ends, that gives you so much more flexibility as an offense. I was talking to a Power 4 offensive coordinator this past, I guess it was early summer, late spring, and he was just saying, he's like, that is the future of college football. Like when you can put your tight end out in the slot and feel just as good about having him on the field in the slot as you do with his hand in the dirt, that changes the game. That changes the game for you because defenses, it's so difficult to match up with that personnel. So I don't want to overstate the importance of having, athletic tight ends, but the bottom line here is right now in fall camp, they feel real good about that group. They feel real good about the ability of that group athletically. Now, this wide receiver room is very deep. Right now, we're still waiting to see on what the final verdict is, but Jaden Gibson went down with a knee injury. Talented wide receiver for them out there at Oklahoma. I'm just going to say, we're waiting to see. Don't know how serious it is. It sounds like it is pretty serious. I believe he's undergoing an MRI. If we have more information in the future, we'll obviously talk about it. But bottom line, it looks like he is, at the very least, going to be unavailable for some time. The good news is that wide receiver room that I just spoke to, still very deep. Andrew Anthony, Jaleel Farouk, kind of on the mend from injury. I think they'll be weapons for you when they are healthy. That's pretty obvious. But Deion Brooks is the name that we all need to make sure we're aligned on. Transfer wide receiver from Purdue. If you saw the Oklahoma spring game, he was putting on a clinic. He was passing out T-shirts and juice boxes after the game. Like that he had like over 150, 170 some odd yards in that game. Him and Jackson Arnold, obviously very dialed in. They are going to make a point to force feed him the football. Whether it's in the screen game, whether it's in the quick game. Heck, you could see him on some jet sweep action. Could see him pushing the ball vertical. Like Deion Burks will be a guy for them that they will look to get the football to early and often and creatively. So be excited about him, man, because he is a stud. All right, there's a lot to be excited about right now. We're going to give you some more intel as we get more scrimmages under our belt here out there in Norman. But bottom line is a lot progressing, a lot baking. At the end of the day, I still think it's about Jackson Arnold. It's about the offensive line. So those are the two things that I would keep a pulse on most closely. But again, subscribe to Sooner Scoop, the YouTube channel, and also get you a membership at Sooner Scoop, the Oklahoma on 3 site, because all the intel and then some is jam-packed over there. And again, it's well worth that $1 using JD1 for your first month. So I want us to talk about Texas a little bit right now. And this is still fall camp intel in nature. Joe Cook and the team over there inside Texas are crushing all the coverage. So that's the Texas on 3 site. Again, JD1, $1 first month is like stealing. I'm just saying that right now. The vibe out there at Texas is very interesting, because when we sat down with Jahdae Barron at SEC Media Days, we asked him how that team was sort of entering 2024 from an attitude perspective. And I was sort of expecting him to say, like, hey, we're hungry, we're excited, want to build on last year. And what he kept telling us repeatedly was like how angry they were, how frustrated they were. He's like, hey, last year we expected to compete for a national championship. If we're reading between the lines, there was essentially what he was telling us. He feels like this team fell short of what they were capable of in 2023. And so there's a real edge to this team. And previously at Texas, I don't know if that was always the case. I think maybe previously it was, hey, let's get to the Big 12 title game. Let's try and, make a run at this conference and play for a nice bowl game. Like, that's clearly not the vibe. Obviously, because they're not in the Big 12 anymore. That's one part of it. But the fact that they achieved what they achieved last year, heading into the SEC, this is a very, very hungry team. So CJ Baxter, it's been well documented at this point, is done for the year. LCL and PCL tear. I mean, this sucks. Like, I hate every part of this. I hate whenever you have anybody get injured. It's the unfortunate reality in football is the injury rate is 100%. But, like, for a kid who hadn't even had his season start just yet and had a promising freshman campaign, your heart breaks for him. I'm sure he's hurting, much like Jaden Gibson is at Oklahoma. And, again, we'll see what the final verdict is there. But you hate to see guys get hurt, especially with all the potential they have in front of them and what both those guys are going to do this season. But C.J. Baxter at Texas, again, done for the year. Hate that. Horrible and just absolutely tragic. So your heart breaks for him. On the other side of that, in that running back room, the guys that are going to replace his production that he would have had in 2024, there's a lot of really, really talented backs. Jaden Blue is a guy that most Texas fans know. Great speed, very shifty. And Joe Cook, when he and I were talking earlier this morning, he reminded me, he's like, if there is some concern around Jaden Blue and his versatility and him running between the tackles, like what he's going to do on the inside zone, he said, think back to the Iowa State game this year when Jonathan Brooks, I believe that was his first game without Jonathan Brooks, and they had to put the game on ice against Iowa State. Who'd they hand the football to? Jaden Blue. So there's a tremendous amount of confidence, I have to believe, within that building in Jaden Blue. I think that he is someone who is poised to have a really good season now with C.J. Baxter not in the lineup, unfortunately. I think he'll step up and do a great job. 2 other names to know, though. Trey Wisner is a running back out of the state of Texas, and he's someone that I actually got to cover when he was in high school. So for a small period of time, Trey Wisner played his football at Waco Connolly, and I was doing color commentary. And I'll just tell you what, man, every single Friday night, this dude was balling. Whether it was kick return, whether he was playing defense, whether they were handing the football, whether they were throwing him the ball out of the backfield, like he is a special player with the ball in his hands. I'm excited to see what he does now with potentially more carries coming his way with no C.J. Baxter in the lineup. So I'm excited about him. I think he's a really good player. Jarrett Gibson is a guy who was obviously very, very highly touted out of high school, as most of these guys were that end up going to Texas. He's a little bit more of the compact, lower center of gravity, strong build. But he was a guy that I mentioned, played at IMG. When you play at IMG, I'm not telling you that you can't have great development in other high schools. I think that's absolutely true. When you play at IMG, though, you find a lot of these guys are a little bit more refined in their skill set, a little bit more college ready. Keep an eye on Jarrett Gibson. So Jaden Blue, I expect him to be the lead guy, but there's still a lot of other backs behind Jaden Blue that I think are more than capable to take on those secondary carries of sorts. So the future is still bright for Texas in the run game. I would also mention this. When you talk about the Texas offense, yes, they want to run the football. We've said it many times on this show. I think Sark, if you asked him with some truth serum in his system, he would say, I want to run the football until they stop it. I think that's the case. However, when you have a year 3 quarterback in Quinn Ewers, and you have the monstars that Texas has in that wide receiver room, the luxury is you can lean on your third-year quarterback. You can lean on that pass game. You still got to have the run game present, but I think a lot of what Texas wants to do in 2024, their aspirations, rest solely on the shoulders of Quinn Ewers, and for good reason. He didn't come back to just go play in the Alamo Bowl. Like, he came back to make a college football playoff run. That's what this team expects, and I think that's more responsibility on his shoulders with no C.J. Baxter, but nonetheless, I think that was going to be the case anyway. You're going to ask a lot of Quinn Ewers to get you to where you want to go. Steve Sarkisian, throughout fall camp to this point, has raved about Quinn Ewers and his leadership. Going back to what I just said, being a year 3 guy, it's now time for Quinn Ewers to look like a year 3 guy. Now, he looked really solid last season, but the thing that excites me about him is his projection and his trend. Like, from year 1 to year 2 in that system, from what I could tell, it was night and day. Like, yes, from an output perspective, that's one part of it, but also just like a consistency perspective. Like, there were times Quinn Ewers' first year at Texas when they went to Oklahoma State where, like, I didn't know who I was going to get. I think against Oklahoma State, he had something like 30 incompletions. And there's other variables that bake into that game itself, from the conditions to people talking about what was or wasn't right with him physically. At the end of the day, Quinn Ewers and his progression, both as a leader and as the guy in the system, is what excites you as a Texas fan. So hearing he's continuing to ratchet it up from a leadership perspective, a guy who, from what I can tell, is more often a little more soft-spoken, a little quieter. His leadership is a massive factor for them as they want to go and find their way to Atlanta. Let's just call a spade here. That is the goal for this team, and I think Quinn Ewers and his leadership is a massive part of that. Speaking to the wide receiver room, y'all, they may legitimately be 6 deep in that room. And one thing we say a lot about Sark, if you give him the ingredients, he will cook. If you give him the proper personnel to execute his system, throwing the football downfield, he will be great. You got the right guys back on the offensive line to protect your quarterback, got a third-year quarterback, and you got dudes to get the rock to. From a Jonte Cook to guys they took through the portal, from a Silas Bolden to a Matthew Golden to Isaiah Bondland. They got a lot of real deal ability. They're not just taking some flyers on these guys. Like, these are guys that have all produced at a high level at their respective spots. Isaiah Bond being the guy that I expect to be wide receiver 1. Also, don't sleep on Ryan Wingo. Young buck, true freshman, had a big spring game, got there early. Excited about him. Now, on the defensive side of the ball, coming out of the spring, the concern was, okay, what's the defensive line depth like? Like, we like Alfred Collins. We feel good about that second and third level of the defense, but what's, like, the depth like in the trenches? Because you lose a Tavondre Sweat and a Byron Murphy, 2 All-American defensive tackles. Dudes like that do not grow on trees, to put it simply. Went to the portal, got some more pieces. And depth, I don't think, is the concern so much as the question is, okay, well, how do we put these platoons together? Because, you got to have tremendous depth is one part we already mentioned, but like being able to pair pass rushers and run stuffers and just have the right makeup from the first unit to the second unit, and when you rotate them in and out, especially in the SEC, like, that's the thing to watch for, I think. So, again, well worth the membership over at Inside Texas. Got a scrimmage this weekend. We're going to learn a little bit more about Texas as well as a number of other teams across the country. So keep it locked right here, but get a membership at Inside Texas for all your Texas intel. Again, that's the On3 Texas site. $1 using JD1 for your first month. It's like stealing. But Texas, man, they're fired up. They're angry. And if you're a Texas Longhorn fan, to hear about the lack of complacency and the aggressive nature, competitive edge, those are all good things and all things that I don't know that you saw at Texas, give or take 5 years ago. So fall camp is rolling. We'd love to see it. Intel is intel at this point in the game, but y'all, we are so close to actual football games being played. So roll party roll. Hey, there was a trend going on social media yesterday, if y'all were watching, and it was the darts only tweet that you saw from, it felt like pretty much everyone. Like, I think even basketball teams are doing the whole darts only trend. And so to kind of, if you have no idea what I'm talking about, to kind of set the stage for us here, Shedeur Sanders at Colorado and the Colorado creative team are filming practice. And so Shedeur Sanders drops back to pass, steps up in the pocket, delivers call a spade here, delivered a dart to his guy in the back of the end zone. But the way that the creative team put out this video, it showed a back angle of the offense with Shedeur Sanders stepping up, and then when the receiver caught the football, it cut to the receiver, a close-up on him catching the ball. And so social media does what social media does, and you can see it here if you're watching live on YouTube. Like, wait, did Colorado cut out an incompletion to make it look like it was a touchdown pass? And so, of course, like Twitter runs with it, and they're saying Colorado's just doing this because that's Deion's kid playing quarterback. And, oh, man, look at Colorado, that social media team. And everyone's probably thinking about Dan Lanning talking about Colorado playing for clicks. And so that kind of had a life of its own for a minute. And then you saw it get some real fuel to the fire when Arkansas posted their own tweet of Taylor Green dropping back to pass, clearly throwing something in the quick game, and then cutting to the ball being up in the air for a period of time like he threw a deep ball, like very obviously not the same clip, and they put the caption, darts only, which was the same caption that Colorado had. And then you saw everybody and their mama run with this tweet. And so there was, for a second, you're like, what is going on? For the record, Colorado did actually quote tweet their own tweet with the full video of the back angle. They didn't doctor it. They didn't cut it to a completion to make Shedeur look good. It was just like a creative decision, I suppose. Couple of thoughts on this. My first thought was like, okay, well, even if they did cut it to make it look like a completion, who really cares? Like, do what you want to do, bro. It's fall camp. Whatever kind of video you want to put out there for me to see or not see, like, it is your decision. I don't really care. Why? Because they're actually going to play football games here soon. So whatever you put on social media doesn't really matter to me. But then, as we got more information, like, okay, it is real, I was like, okay, well, then who cares? Who cares? It was real. That doesn't impact anybody's day-to-day living. But as the trend started to grow, you started to get some buzz from folks in the Colorado arena, and they're saying, oh, man, Deion's got rent, Deion doing what Deion does, man. Colorado living rent-free in everyone's heads. We're trendsetters, baby. What do you get? What conversation starters? That's us out here in Boulder. And when that started to bubble up, I was like, wait a second. I don't think that you understand what's happening here. The rest of college football is running with your trend, yes, but they are all trolling you. They are trolling what you put out there in the social media world. And I personally don't have a dog in the fight. I don't care one way or the other. But that posture from the Colorado fan base, to me, was a little bit funny. And I don't pretend to speak for everybody in that Colorado sector of things. That was just the 10% that I saw on social media. At the end of the day, I thought it was funny. I thought it was all in good fun. And the fact that Colorado went out and was like, no, this was really the clip, I think that deserves maybe a little bit more oxygen in this conversation. But the darts-only trend just means that we need college football to actually be played here soon. All right, we actually need some games to start happening, and at that point, social media will be obsolete, to say the least. But speaking of social media, I asked y'all on my Twitter page, I said, what is the craziest thing that you believe will happen the first month of the college football season? And y'all brought the juice with this one, man. Tampa Sports Enthusiast started us off. He says Florida, they're going to start the season undefeated. Gators at 4-0, baby. And if you're betting the over on that over-under 4.5 win total for the Gators, then you're like, okay, I like that. I like that going into October with only one more to capture for the good folks in Gainesville. The schedule for them, if they were to go 4-0, that would be very impressive because they got Miami. They got Samford, not to be confused with the school out there in Palo Alto, Samford from Alabama, Texas A&M, and they're at Mississippi State. So I like the fact that they have 3 of those first 4 at home. If they were to start 4-0, that would potentially be 2 ranked wins, depending on what Texas A&M is when they end up playing them. But let's be real, the vibes would be incredible in Gainesville because there's been so much negative talk around Billy Napier and this roster and what they're not going to accomplish in the schedule. And it's like if they start 4-0, that Billy Napier hot seat talk is on hold. That talk around Florida's roster and what they can't accomplish, that's on hold. Now, if they do go 4-0 and they are able to, be sitting at that spot heading into October, what I think it would mean from a gameplay standpoint is the offense had real deal progress. And we've been high on Graham Mertz here for a while now. Talked to him at SEC Media Days. It only made us more excited about what he's going to be in 2024. Love what they did through the portal. I love what they have in that backfield if they're healthy. I think they're maybe a little bit more underrated than some folks like to give credit for. To me, it just means the offense probably did what they need to do. Because if you're going to beat Miami in that first game of the season, I get it now. The swamp will be rocking. That'll probably help the defense out, and you would hope throw Cam Ward out of rhythm a little bit. But I think that you will have to score to beat Miami. I don't think you win like a 17-10 kind of game if you're going to beat the Canes. I think they're going to score more than that. Same thing with A&M. Will A&M score at the same clip that Miami will? remains to be seen. I think Connor Wegman's a really freaking good quarterback, but that's going to be a physical outfit defensively for Texas A&M. Like, that's a team that is going to be a really good matchup for you. And so if you score on them and you're able to beat them that way, like, that would speak volumes to what Graham Mertz did over the offseason, would speak volumes to the way they elevated the skill positions for him, grabbing Shamir Dike from Wisconsin, which is his guy, grabbing Elijah Badger through the portal, who was one of the best receivers in the Pac-12 last season, or the past 2 years, rather. That'd be big. That'd be very, very big. Again, the defense, since so many of those games are at home to start the year, I think you probably hold your opinion of them a little bit loosely, because we know playing offense in the swamp and playing offense on the road, or excuse me, not on the road, but having to play offense, I'll rephrase that, playing defense in the swamp if you're Florida, and playing defense on the road, bit of a different task. So, hold your opinion loosely there. But I think the most impactful part of this, if Florida does start the year 4-0, and full transparency, I think they will, that speaks volumes to what their trajectory is in 2024. Like, when you win early, especially when there's so much being said about you externally going into the year, the temperature that sets for your team, the belief, the impact, the swag that builds is like, okay, hey, we can really do some damage here. Because it's impossible to not hear all the things that guys like me are saying into a microphone about what Florida will or won't be. Like, you can say you block out the noise, but in social media today, like, everybody hears different tidbits of what's happening in the opinion space. At the very least, I'm sure they're aware of their over-under win total, whether that's a good thing or a bad thing. The confidence they would build by starting 4-0 makes them dangerous, because there's a difference, I think, in knowing and believing from fall camp and, doing 11 on 11 and good on good and having, good things to show yourself there on tape, and then actually going out and doing it against a Texas A&M, against a Miami. Heck, going on the road and beating a Mississippi State. As much as you think you're overmatching them, still going into Starkville, playing an offense like Jeff Lebby that's going to put pressure on you and try and get you misaligned, I don't think that's one to just look past either. So at the end of the day, man, when you talk about what Florida will be long-term, if they start out 4-0 in 2024, you look at the games in November, and I don't know that you feel like you are a superior roster at any point in time, but at the very least, man, I will say this: LSU, Texas, Ole Miss, Georgia, Florida State, they would much rather play a Florida team that starts 2-2, that has their ego a little bruised, and maybe there's some fragmentation of sorts when it comes to beliefs and buy-in, than a 4-0 team that says we got some swagger, we got some confidence, and not just because we feel that way about ourselves, because we've proven it now on the field against good freaking teams in Miami and A&M to start the year. So will Florida start 4-0? I think so. I'm with Tampa sports enthusiasts here, and what happens after that remains to be seen. But to start fast, to build belief, that matters, and that'd be crucial for Florida as they try and get some mojo here early in year 3 of the Billy Napier era. Now, Adam hit us up, and this was probably the best answer to this prompt that we're talking about on the show today. The craziest thing that you believe will happen in 2024, the first month of the college football season. Week 2, you got Michigan, you got Texas. Adam says that Michigan is about to beat Texas by double digits. For those of y'all that follow me on Twitter and that see me post that reaction photo to like a recruit decommitting or flipping or just kind of surprising news, that reaction where I'm like looking with crazy eyes at the camera, that was my vibe when I read this for the first time. Michigan could absolutely win this football game. Make no mistake. It's in Ann Arbor. It is early on in the season to where you could catch Texas maybe not totally in rhythm with all of their transfer receivers they've gotten. Texas is currently favored by 3.5 in the Big House. Will that be the same heading into week 2? Remains to be seen. Michigan could definitely win this game. I think the gameplay would look a little bit like, that heavy weight we talk about that Michigan puts on your back from the first quarter to the second quarter, and then by the third and fourth, it's like they're just suffocating you. I think that would probably look like a lower score outfit. Maybe it's like a 21-17 game. Maybe it's a 24-21 game. Maybe it's a game played in the teens. The bottom line here is the take for me right now, from what we know about Michigan, is if they're going to win this game, it's probably low scoring, it's probably a rock fight, it's probably, game control. And if they're going to win by double digits, to me that would mean that the offense, more specifically the quarterback and wide receiver play, came alive. Because I think to beat Texas by double digits, that would mean that you were able to have some sort of other answer offensively. Because we know Michigan, we're going to talk about this later in the show, we know Michigan's going to pound the rock. We know they're going to try and punch you in the face and just attack you defensively. Like, that whole outfit at Michigan isn't changing. The question is who's playing quarterback and then who they throwing the football to. That would mean that either an Alex Orji or a Jack Tuttle or a Davis Warren elevated their play substantially in a big moment, biggest moment of their career to this point, and a Fred Moore or a Samaj Morgan or a Peyton O'Leary stepped up in a big way and put pressure on Texas. Because I think Texas, if we're just going to be real here, they're going to try and stack the box against Michigan, right? You'd be foolish not to. So if Michigan wins by double digits, that means they had something to counter that run game to make Texas pay when they over-pursued. Now, if they win by double digits, it also means your defense locked down on that day, which is massive. So take of that as you will. But it would also, I think, when you look at the big picture for Michigan, winning by double digits, winning by a point, you'll take it however you can get it, because the college football playoff path for Michigan at that point becomes much more clear. The only games left that you're really eyeing as games that could be similar roster value or similar roster talent tests, rather, Ohio State at the end of the year. It'll get here when it gets here. Before that, you got Oregon. Those two games, even if you drop both those games, you go 10-2. I think a 10-2 Michigan team with a win over what you would imagine is a top 5, top 3 Texas team, it's a pretty good resume. That'll get you in the dance. Now, 10-2 probably doesn't get you into the Big Ten title game, but that'll get you into the college football playoff. So Jesse Simonton has his 12-team playoff field out right now on on3.com. Go check that out. He's got Michigan in the dance, and I don't think that it is an irresponsible take by any stretch of the imagination at all. But if they beat Texas, that buzz is only going to grow even stronger, and Jesse's going to look a lot smarter than he even does right now. So this is a hard one for me to get behind, but even so, if it happens, what it would mean for Michigan long-term is massive, both from a gameplay perspective, the quarterback and receiver play, and then also the college football playoff path becomes very exciting moving forward. Last one for you here, Mark. His crazy thing that he believes is about to happen here this first month of the college football season is that you have Auburn heading to Athens, Georgia for an undefeated showdown. Now, is that college game day? Remains to be seen if they're both undefeated. But like you look at both schedules here, I think Georgia actually has the tougher lead up here to being undefeated than Auburn. Now, we'll give you our record prediction game by game for Georgia here a little bit later in the show. But just to give you a taste here, Clemson, at Kentucky, at Alabama, you sprinkle in some Tennessee Tech in there as well. But like those are all, I think, going to be pretty solid tests for Georgia. Clemson remains to be seen. I say test in the sense of what their roster talent level is. At Kentucky, that's a tough place to play. Kentucky's given Georgia issues before. Going to Bama, all bets are off. For Auburn, man, their path forward, you got Alabama A&M to start. You got Cal. You got New Mexico, not New Mexico State now, just New Mexico, Arkansas, and then Oklahoma. The big headline here, if you're an Auburn fan, all those games are at the crib. And we know this, man. You play at Jordan-Hare, weird things happen there. Auburn is a different team there. And so to get that lead up at home, to get that kind of difficulty lead up even to the way it ramps up from A&M to Cal, Alabama A&M to Cal, New Mexico, having Arkansas to kind of get the feet wet, and then play Oklahoma, I think this lines up perfectly. Like, y'all, I think this is going to happen. Not just because I think Georgia's going to start undefeated, as much as they have a more difficult gauntlet than Auburn does. I think Auburn's going to start undefeated. I really do. And I think the key thing here for us to all keep an eye on as this season unfolds, the early part of it, you got to get Peyton Thorne comfortable. Get him comfortable. Build his confidence, build his belief. Whatever he feels good about in the game plan, we do more of that. Okay? We lean on that. Also, when it comes to Peyton Thorne's confidence, I'd love to see it be, for the most part, as a passer. Because I'll be real, like, we know this dude can run the football. We saw it against Georgia last year in a very real way. I thought he flashed and was the difference maker in that game. He was why Auburn was as close as they were in that game with what he did with his legs. I want to save that for Georgia. Yes, because of what you see on tape, that's one part of it. Also, just physically, I want him to be as fresh as possible heading into that game and be as confident as possible in what he can do throwing the football downfield with all these weapons. So you have that lead up I mentioned. Alabama A&M, Cal. You have, I just mentioned it where I lose. Okay, New Mexico, Arkansas. That lead up to Oklahoma. By the game against Oklahoma at Auburn, I hope this one's a night game for Auburn's sake. This is the game where you got to have everything firing on all cylinders. Like, this is, for all intents and purposes, a statement game. And then also, if you want to go and beat Georgia, this is your dress rehearsal. Like, everyone's got to, like, we got to play like a team that's ready to go play the number one team in America, which Georgia will be at that point in time, I believe. Would love to see Peyton Thorne just distribute the football in that big moment. But again, I'll tell you, Oklahoma, man, this is one they have circled. This is one that I think is winnable. It's one I think they will win as we sit here in August. Auburn's poised for this. With Hugh Freeze calling the shots, with what they now have on that roster, with the skill players they have, with the defense now I think structurally even being more sound with DJ Durkin as the DC, they're built for this. And so I think we're going to get that matchup the 5th of October where they play Georgia in Athens undefeated. And it's going to be a lot of fun, man. I can't wait for that one. So, Mark, I'm with you. I think Auburn heads to Georgia with an unblemished record and making for a very big game between the hedges. Just the fact that we can talk about that being around the corner is freaking awesome, dude. So awesome. So awesome. Hey, if you're tuned in live, hope you're having a tremendous Thursday. Hope you're having the biggest Thursday of the week. If you're watching live, two things really quick. Subscribe to the channel and also like the video. Just helps us, helps you. If you're listening on podcast, just subscribe to the feed, and that also helps us tremendously. So we appreciate you for that. Record prediction season has ruffled some feathers. We understand that. We're okay with that. We're going to predict Michigan's record right now. Before we do that, though, quick note on the whole Jim Harbaugh situation that happened yesterday. Not really a college football story of sorts, so I don't want to spend too much time of it. But the NCAA hit Jim Harbaugh with a 4-year show cause for unethical conduct. Again, I don't think this matters at all. I think it's a pretty irrelevant story to the college football landscape. Why? Because Jim Harbaugh, I wholeheartedly believe, will not return to college football. Ever. Unless he's in some kind of like analyst role or something like that. Like, to me, this is the equivalent of being suspended from a school that you already graduated from. Hey, you cannot come back here again. Cool. I'm not coming back there. I have no plans to come back there. The NCAA is just hilarious to me. But yeah, just thought we'd have to at least give you our 2 cents on that before we jump into this record prediction. Michigan's over-under win total preseason is sitting at 8.5 wins. There's obviously those 3 big games that the bookmakers out there in Vegas are eyeing, from Texas to the game against Oregon, and then obviously Ohio State to finish the season. The plan doesn't actually change all that much for Michigan. Like, I know you lose J.J. McCarthy and some other key pieces to the NFL like a Roman Wilson and Cornelius Johnson, but like, the main thing is sort of still the main thing for Michigan, even with Jim Harbaugh gone to the NFL. There's no extreme home makeover for Michigan. Like, you're going to watch them play on Saturdays, and you're like, yeah, some different jersey numbers, some guys that maybe I don't recognize, but that's still bully ball, that's still smash mouth, that's still make you say uncle in the fourth quarter kind of football out there in Ann Arbor. That's what they do. And that's not changing with Sharon Moore. And I think when we talk about Sharon Moore, there's this thought that he's going to have like this big learning curve and he's going to have to make it his own Michigan. And I think parts of that are true in certain ways, but I think, to be more real about it, like, I think Sharon Moore was way more involved in what Michigan did last year than how we're talking about it right now in the college football public. Like, I talked to someone pretty close to Michigan, and they told me, like, hey, if there's a guy that's even more process-oriented and more dialed into how we want to do things, it's Sharon Moore. And that's not somehow speaking ill of Jim Harbaugh or taking credit away from him. But what I was told is that Jim Harbaugh did not find a schedule that he couldn't tear up a few minutes before it was actually supposed to go into play. That's not Sharon Moore. Now, Jim Harbaugh was successful because he was Jim Harbaugh, because he operated his own way, because he was quirky and I'm sure had his own way to tear up schedules before they were supposed to happen. But with Sharon Moore, like, you give him a plan, from what I can tell, from what I've heard, he is going to execute that plan all the way through the whistle, all the way through the line, like that. Like he is bought into their process and their way of doing things. And I have to believe he was more involved in putting that process together than how we're speaking about it right now. And that process last year, just so we're all aligned, won a national title at Michigan. So yes, some things change. Who's playing quarterback? That's the big question. Davis Warren, Alex Orji are the two that you saw during the spring. I'm just going to say this now. You hear a little rumble over there at the Wolverine, the Michigan on 3 site. There is some real confidence around what Jack Tuttle brings to the table here. Now, Jack Tuttle on his 3rd school, started at Utah and went to Indiana, and now he's at Michigan, been around the block a time or two. The fact that he missed spring football for the most part and is now being talked about as potentially the guy, some folks would tell you the favorite to win the job. I'm just saying that speaks volumes to Jack Tuttle's ability and speaks volumes to his control of that offense. So we'll see what happens there. But let's go game by game here, man. Fresno State, I love the Bulldogs. That's a win. You play Texas at home, week 2. There is absolutely a path for Michigan to win that football game. I think that might be the most fascinating game of week 2 of the college football season. I think you drop that game. Right now, I don't know what we're getting from the quarterback play at Michigan. I think Quinn Ewers is going to probably be the side that I would lean towards as we sit here right now in August. Reserving our right to change our pick there. We'll go ahead and say Texas right now. I just think they're going to be tough to keep pace with if they're able to get some leverage and get up by 7 points on you. Arkansas State, that's a win. USC, even if USC improves defensively a good amount, I don't know that we'll see that until they get some more reps under their belt. I think they'll be a team that maybe plays better football down the stretch. So I think you beat USC, you beat Minnesota, and once you know it, you got Washington, going to Washington on the docket. Now, that's going to be a national title rematch, which will be a lot of fun. Both schools, since they last played, have a different starting quarterback, have a different head coach, a lot of different players. I think Michigan rolls in that one and welcomes their new Big Ten opponent with a little bit of some juice there. You go to Illinois. I think that's a win. Michigan State could be a little bit tricky. Rivalry game. I think Jonathan Smith is going to be a dude for them. A long time in East Lansing. We'll see how that looks year 1. I think you do win that football game. Now, the game against Oregon is tricky. This game, to me, is a lot about, again, the quarterback position and also just like the experience level. I think Oregon's probably the more talented roster right now, so I'll lean with them. But, again, that's a game where it's later on in the season. We could definitely revisit that and have a different opinion on it. But right now, I'll take the roster talent from Oregon, and I just feel like I know more about them right now, so we'll lean Ducks there, and Michigan drops that one. At Indiana, club dub. Northwestern, love it, but that's a win. At Ohio State. Now, I think you lose this game. Ohio State has really, for the better part of the last few years, been working to build an outfit and working to build a team that is able to match up physically with Michigan. Michigan, on paper at least, is trending backwards from an experience standpoint. Ohio State, they have built the Death Star from a roster perspective, and they are expecting to be able to match up with a team like Michigan and a team like Georgia and so on and so forth. So I think that Ohio State wins that football game. 9-3 is what I have Michigan at right now. And I don't mean to play both sides of this thing because that's not really what I try to do, especially as we sit here in August. Like, I try to always give y'all the black and white take. I try and give y'all just like the most just transparent view on things. 9-3 is how I feel today. The more that we hear about the Connor Stallion stuff and things being thrown Sharon Moore's way and what the NCAA is trying to do to Michigan, like, to me, I think that's just fuel to the fire. So 10-2 would not surprise me at all. 10-2, again, is a college football playoff berth. But right now, I'll put them at 9-3. And in a what should be a quote-unquote down year for Michigan, 9-3 with that schedule. And what they would be in 2025, I think, sets you up very nicely for the future. But let me know on the socials, man. Let me know in the comment section who you think, or what you think, rather, Michigan is going in 2024. All right, so this is a fun one, because if you have watched this show for the better part of the last week, you know that we have a very strong feel about Georgia. You know that we feel very confident in what they're going to be in 2024, but what's their record going to be at the end of that 12-game slate? Because The 12 games, man, are brutal. People used to knock Georgia for not having the most difficult go in the SEC because of where they were in the conference. No more divisions. Okay, so it is Hunger Games style. The over-under win total for Georgia is at 10.5. What does that look like for them at the end of the season? Which sides did you bet? We'll talk about it right now. Before we get to that, though, Georgia fans, make sure you're subscribed right here to the On3 YouTube channel. College football every single day. A live show 3 times a week. No hot takes, no additives, no preservatives. Just college football, the way that you want it talked about, talking about your team as well as a myriad of other teams across the landscape. So we appreciate you in advance for being dialed in and making sure you're subscribed, because a lot of y'all have over the course of the last few months. So thank you for that. There's no way to sugarcoat this, man. Georgia's kind of a boring team. As we sit here in August, kind of a boring outfit. And I don't say that to be a slight. I say that, honestly, more so as a compliment. Because when you talk about Georgia, there's not a lot to pick apart. Best coach in college football. Check. No real talking point there besides saying he's the best coach in college football. Carson Beck, I believe, best quarterback in college football. I don't think that's really that much of a debate if he's like a top 3 guy. Yeah, that's a discussion, but like Carson Beck's going to be really freaking good. Check. Roster, as good, if not better than anyone else in the country. What's controversial about that? What is interesting about that? Not a lot. Now, they did take some transfers, especially in that wide receiver room. Colby Young is a guy you're excited about. London Humphreys was a guy they were excited about when he got there. Dom Lovett, not a transfer, but he transferred. I guess he's a transfer from 2 years ago. Gets another year in the system. Trevor Etienne in the running back room. We'll see how he translates, but they're excited about him, as they should be. They don't really have a weakness on this roster. They don't. There might be some points where you're like, hey, what do the newcomers look like in that room? Like, there's a good amount of production to replace on defense, but still, like, there's not a lot of weaknesses you can point to right now when you talk about Georgia. So to beat them, what's the actual formula there? One, you'd have to catch them on the wrong day. Like, they're just somehow not locked in. They're not focused. They kind of sleepwalk for the first couple of quarters, and you just pull away. Kirby Smart's the head coach. They didn't win the national title last year. Good luck with that one. You out-scheme them. Again, Kirby Smart's the head coach. Mike Bobo's the OC. Glenn Schumann's the DC. I don't think Georgia schematically will be over their skis in any game this year. You have to have a matchup maybe that you can exploit. Georgia, for my money, is one of the best, if not the best, matchup teams in America. Like, there's nobody where I'm like, yeah, if you got him on an island, maybe you could make him pay. Like, I don't see that for Georgia. As we sit here in August, I don't see like a matchup weakness for them across the board, offense or defense. So what does that mean for the over-under win total? At 10.5, let's just go game by game here. Clemson, from a roster talent level, on paper, should be a good test, right? Should be a good test. I think that that spread right now in Vegas is somewhere around 2 scores, 2 touchdowns. Whatever it is, take it. I bet it's going to go up, and I think that will be a bloodbath in Atlanta. Georgia will roll Clemson from what I can tell right now in August. You got Tennessee the next game. Tennessee Tech, not Tennessee. So that's a dub. At Kentucky, this game is not going to be easy. Kentucky historically has actually given Georgia a fair amount of issues over the course of the last couple of years. Still, I think that's a win. And then you get a bye week before Alabama. That's massive because you give Kirby an extra week to prepare. It's a place that he was previously at as a DC under Nick Saban. It's a team that kept Georgia out of the college football playoff last year from the SEC title game in Atlanta. Like, this one is personal on a number of levels. I think Kalen DeBoer is the right guy at Bama. As we sit here right now, I think that was a good hire of sorts. Long-term, another discussion. But I think that Georgia wins that football game, okay? Then you play Auburn. I told you, I think Auburn's actually undefeated heading into this game. Massive, I would say, national draw for this game. It'll be fun to have that rivalry have a little bit of juice again. Close game last year. I think Georgia remembers that. It's at home. I think they win that game. You beat Mississippi State. And then you have what really should be the biggest test on Georgia's schedule. You're at Texas. It's on the road. It's in Austin, which is a whole other variable. Thank goodness it's in October, so it should hopefully be a little bit cooler than having to go there that first month of the season and have it be like 110 degrees. I think that the experience of Georgia in the big moments, top to bottom, and the continuity they have offensively, I think that's the difference in this game. Because, again, schematically, I think they'll match up more than well on the perimeter with Texas. But to be able to hand the football off and to let those big uglies up front have their way, it may not happen in the first half. It may not even happen the first 3 quarters. But by the fourth quarter, I think that Georgia and their physicality up front will be too much for Texas. Not saying Texas isn't still a real physical outfit. I think Texas is going to be great this year. Have them as a college football playoff team. But I think that Georgia wins that game, leaning on their big boys up front and Carson Beck making you pay when it counts. You got Florida. That'll be great. It'll be a neutral site. Key for that game, obviously, is early pressure and kind of taking away the will of Florida early if you can make that happen. Maybe not the will, but the belief of Florida, if that's the right phrasing to use. Bottom line, take the wind out of the sails. Make it one-sided early, as Georgia would like to do, and I think that probably is a win for you there. At Ole Miss. Now, this is a game where Ole Miss has done a lot of work, I think, because of what happened last year in Athens on their roster. Lane Kiffin said after the game, like, yeah, they have more 5-stars than us. Like, that's on us as coaches. We got to have better players. And when you look at that roster now at Ole Miss, it is much improved. They do have more guys that, quite frankly, could play at Georgia, or at least be on the roster and contribute at Georgia. Even with that being said, defense of Georgia versus the offense of Ole Miss, I think that there's too much team speed right now for Georgia to be taken advantage of from the horizontal game from Ole Miss. So I think they win that football game, does Georgia. Then you play Tennessee. Tennessee, they want to create matchups. We already told you, I think Georgia's matchup game is as good as anyone else in the country. They're going to be able to win those matchups when they're on an island as good as I think Nico's going to be. So Georgia wins that game. UMass, I love Paul Revere, but they do win that football game, and then you beat Georgia Tech. I think they finished 12-0. I think they finished 12-0. And I've said this before, I'll say it one more time. Georgia this year, I wholeheartedly believe, is on a mission. Not that they weren't on a mission previously. Not that they haven't been hungry before, or they haven't been in attack mode and all those things that you put on T-shirts and look good and read good and probably sound great in hype videos. Georgia this year, internally, from a player level, I believe has a different level of hunger. And Kirby Smart, I think he loves it because he no longer has to sell them this idea that, like, hey, people are doubting you. Hey, don't you want to go accomplish this, that, and the other? Like, I'm not talking about external doubt. I'm not talking about doubt from the opponents. I'm talking about this team wanting to leave their own legacy. Because a lot of these guys, they were on those teams that won a national title, heck, won 2 national titles. But they weren't the guys. They weren't the starters necessarily across the board there. They want to go get their own national title and leave their own legacy. And so I know this is just a regular season record prediction. I think Georgia doesn't lose a game all year. Regular season, playoff, national title, I think Georgia is the team to beat this year. I think they go wire to wire. I just think they're on another level than anybody else right now in the college football landscape. So we got Georgia going 12-0. I have them keeping a 0 in that loss column the entirety of the year and hoisting the hardware in Atlanta when the confetti drops on January 20th. All right, so how's that? How's that for a prediction, huh? Let's see if I can hit this. A little darts-only action. I guess it's this camera right here. Darts only. All right, hey, we appreciate y'all being tuned in, man, for the entirety of this thing. Again, college football season, it's here. It's about that time. We need y'all all locked in. Everybody, make sure you are subscribed right here to the On3 YouTube channel. If you're a college football sicko, welcome home, baby. College football is a celebration. It is the greatest sport on the face of the planet. That we get to talk about it for a living is just ridiculous. So thank you for allowing us to do that, and thank you for being a part of this program and making it all go, making it what it is. Speaking of making it all go, that man Nick Brake producing the operation, so shouts to him, holding it down, making everything that you see here happen. So big shouts to him. For myself, JD Piquel, we appreciate y'all again one more time. Let's have a great week, man. Let's finish strong here. Thursday, Friday tomorrow, finish through tape. Let's attack the weekend. We love y'all. We appreciate y'all. We're going to keep this party rolling, and we will see y'all.